Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me so much pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of India Habitat Center and Professor Benoy K Behl. Today's talk is the 38th in his monthly series, Glimpses of Culture. The corpus of surviving Indian art is enormous. It covers 5,000 years of living history. This treasure is spread about 3,000 kilometers from east to west and more than 3,000 kilometers from north to south. Therefore, it has been a daunting task for art historians to see the art of India in its perspective. Usually, fragments of this history have been looked at and studied in comparative isolation. That is where the single-handed, widespread documentation of Indian art by Professor Behl is invaluable. Through his vision and analysis, we are able to see each section of this great treasure in its wide perspective. We are also able to trace the developments of this artistic tradition over the centuries, as well as to see its deep links with philosophic heritage. He is the person who for the first time photographed the 5th century Buddhist paintings of Ajanta in their true colors and details. His book, The Ajanta Caves, is among the most widely read books on Indian art history in the world. His recent book, The Art of India, in 2 beautiful volumes, is already in its 3rd print run. Today, he takes us to the grand climax of monumental structural temples made in India. The Konarak Sun Temple, which stood at over 200 feet tall when it was made, is the most magnificent tribute ever paid to Surya, the sun god. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Benoy K Behl will speak to us about Konarak, the sun god's chariot. Over to Professor Behl now, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sujata Chatterji. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A great pleasure to be here again with all of you. Now, the earliest deities which were seen in Indian art were, they embodied the great powers of nature. They were Surya and Indra, and they were seen first in the Bhaja Buddhist caves of Maharashtra. Indra continues to be worshipped, and there is a grand temple for the worship of Indra with more than 1 million visitors in Tokyo, in Japan. Surya was worshipped continuously in India, and in fact, the grandest temples which were made were often made to Surya. In the Kashmir Valley, in the 8th century, the Martand Sun Temple was the apex of the architectural glory of Kashmir. Of course, the other sun temples were again magnificent. The Sun Temple in Gujarat at Modhera, and the Sun Temple in Rajasthan at Ranakpur, and so many others. But the final climax of the most grand of all the sun temples, the most grand of all the temples made in India, was the Konark Sun Temple in Odisha. Of course, the other deities, the other earliest of deities seen in Indian art, were also concerned with nature, with the powers of nature, with the fruitfulness of nature. The very early deities seen soon after very soon after Surya and Indra, were Gajalakshmi and Saraswati. Gajalakshmi personifying the fruitful abundance of nature, the power that regenerates and recreates the world constantly, the pulsating life of nature, the fertility of nature was presented before us in Lakshmi, Gaja Lakshmi with elephants pouring water upon her, and Saraswati. Saraswati, who personifies again the aspects of the world around us, in this case, the most refined aspects, aspects to do with learning, or with music, of inspiration, and so many other beautiful things. And all these deities were the deities through which we recognize the power of nature. Uh, wonderful, a wonderful interplay of ideas is here, because on the one hand, the final knowledge which we always sought was for knowledge of the formless eternal, to lose the connections with the material world, to lose our desires for the objects of the material world, and be able to recognize the oneness of it all in the formless eternal, the Nirgun, the Arupa, the Shunyata. And yet, the recognition of the powers of nature, the recognition of all the grand nature around us, the attractions of the nature around us. Indian art and Indian philosophy never for a moment lost sight of that. There was no attempt to try to brush it under the carpet, that all this does not exist. We just have to simply concentrate on our journey. No. In Indian art heritage and in philosophical heritage, it was recognized that all this is there, and we would bow our heads before all this. The grand powers of nature, recognize them, be respectful of them, and also proceed on the knowledge, on the path towards the knowledge, that which is beyond. And so we have this panorama of 5,000 years of Indian art in front of us, which begins with the importance of the individual journey, the beginning with the Indus Valley civilization, the deities, the art, all of it is made on a small scale, a very human scale. And there is no grandeur expressed, there is no grandeur of kings, there are no monumental buildings, there are no residences of kings. It is, in fact, a cooperative society. And the whole emphasis is on the individual. In times to come, in the whole ancient period that we have looked at in the past few months, we see that the monuments are all being patronized by the people, the common people. The kings are not playing a part in the sponsorship of monuments. And the temples are small. The temples are small, and the deities are exquisitely beautiful. Their grace moves us so that we recognize the divinity, we recognize the grace within us, and through that grace we are transported. And as the centuries proceed, we see that grandeur begins to overtake the simplicity of the exquisite sculptures. The temples become larger and larger. It is kings who start patronizing them, and the kings start expressing their own regal grandeur through these monuments that they patronize, not only the grandeur of the divine. And in all this, we come up through the centuries to the grandest, tallest, biggest temple which was made in India, the Konark Sun Temple of Odisha. a temple which stood over 200 feet high, a temple where we were met by fearless lions that awaken the courage within us to be able to suppress the demons of our ignorance, to be able to leave our ignorance behind in our search for knowledge. And as we proceeded inwards, we were first presented the entire spectacle of nature. We were presented couples, we were presented animals, we were presented so much that exists in the world around us, composite creatures, showing that life can be, which is all part of the illusory world, can be so mingled with the other aspects of life. Beautiful images, marvelous images, images of dance, and so much which brings out the best of all that there is in the world around. Such a grand spectacle of all this was presented in the huge Sun Temple, from where, of course, we would proceed inwards to the divine. So today we have the pleasure of looking at this. My many thanks to the India Habitat Center for yet another opportunity to share aspects of Indian art and culture with all of you. My grateful thanks to Doordarshan, who, with the true spirit of a public broadcaster, did not think so much about TRPs and commercial gains, but instead, over the years, patronized also the making of such deeply researched films such as this, to bring knowledge, to spread knowledge to the people. And my many thanks to Sujata Chatterji, without whom I would not be able to do all that I'm doing. And ladies and gentlemen, uh, without further ado, I would request Sunil to kindly run the film for us. Thank you very much.
In the 13th century, in Odisha on the eastern coast of India, was made a grand temple dedicated to Surya, the sun. It was the tallest and most magnificent temple made in India, the climax of 800 years of building structural stone temples. It was built by King Narasimha Mahadeva I of the Ganga dynasty. The land of Odisha had seen prolific temple building since the 7th and 8th centuries. At nearby Bhubaneswar stand numerous temples. These display the development of a distinctive style of architecture and sculpture in Odisha by the end of the first millennium. The great temple at Konarak was made essentially according to the regional style which had been developed, with a dramatic difference. The temple tower or deul and the hall or jagmohan were conceived as a giant chariot of the sun. Surya the sun is believed to ride his chariot, driven by Aruna or dawn, across the skies each day. 24 large wheels, 12 on each side, representing the 12 months of the year, were made for the ratha or chariot. 7 horses were made in front, who pull it forward at a spirited gallop. Perhaps the inspiration was from South India, where rathas are used to take temple deities in procession on ceremonial occasions. The deul or tower of the temple originally stood over 200 feet tall, higher than any other temple in India. The hall or jagmohan still stands over 130 feet tall. The temple is made of 3 types of stone. Chlorite, which endures very well, is used for the most important areas, including the doorways, the icons in the shrines, and the wonderful musicians made high above. Laterite is the unseen core of the platform and the foundation. The main structures are made of condylite, which unfortunately weathers very easily. None of the stones are available in the area, and they must have been brought from long distances by rafts on the river. Since earliest times, the life-giving and vital qualities of nature have been adored at stupa and temple sites in India. The worship of Surya is as ancient as that of any other deity. Temples to the sun god stand at Martand in Kashmir, Modhera in Gujarat, Ranakpur in Rajasthan, and at many other sites. The magnificent temple drew considerable admiration over the centuries. Abul Fazl, the court historian of the Mughal Emperor Akbar, visited the Konarak temple and wrote, "Even those whose judgment is critical and who are difficult to please stand astonished at its sight." Even with its soaring tower lost, the Sun Temple is still a vision of majesty and grandeur. The structures are perfectly proportioned and covered with an endless wealth of sculpture. The architecture and carvings are intrinsically linked in the scheme of an Indian temple. Here we see the complete harmony and blending of both.
Seeing the art alive on the buildings and seeing how much a part of the buildings they were and how bereft the buildings would be without the sculptures gave me truly a different understanding of the meaning of the sculpture and why they were made in the first place. For us in the West, we often see, as I first saw sculpture, that is divorced from its roots, from where it originally came from. However, when one sees it as part of a building, as an integral part, one is reminded of the texts, the Shilpa Shastras, that refer to the sculptures actually as a necessary part of the architectural accoutrements, decor. Without it, it would be like a woman without her jewelry, essentially. And the sculptures, whether they are the iconic figures in the shrines or whether they're the relief figures on the outside, all have a part to play.
The jagmohan or hall of the temple and the deul or tower are built on the same platform. Against the sides of the platform and the staircase in front are made the giant wheels of the great chariot for the sun. These stand over 10 feet high and lend the quality of an epic imagination to the monument. It is the ratha or chariot which draws Surya in his daily journey across the blue sky. The giant wheels remind us of the grandeur which is in all of creation, the magnificence of divinity which we can awaken within us. The wheels are detailed and realistically made. even with an axle and pin to hold the wheel in place. As with every part of the edifice, they are gorgeously sculpted. Every inch is carved, and miniaturized figures made in great detail inhabit all parts of the wheel. In everything big and small, the artist reflects the expanse of the entire world around him. On the sides of the vast platform is a wealth of reliefs. The Indian artist's love and observation of animals is seen in the many depictions of elephants. They are presented in their sylvan surroundings, uprooting trees, feeding their young, and displaying affection. Other scenes show men trying to capture elephants. They were the prized possessions of the king and nobility. Military processions are another popular theme in the friezes. Men and women are depicted engaged in activities of everyday life. We see a man carrying his goods, as street vendors do till today. There is an old woman taking leave of her family. Perhaps she is leaving on a pilgrimage. We have a scene of a royal person being greeted by a group. These figures are garbed in a foreign type of clothing and bring with them a giraffe, an animal which is not found in India. There are numerous depictions of Alasya Kanyas, or languorous maidens. Since ancient times, all Indian stupas and temples have had such images. They represent the fertility and creative urges of nature, which ensure the continuance of life. Mithuna couples are seen embracing each other. These images of the coming together of man and woman continue since earliest times in Indian art. They are presented along with all else of the natural world and of the divine.
We have the popular impression of a certain sort of erotic element. But when one sees the male and the female coming together, there is that sort of often the sense of eroticism. I would say sensual. But sensual in a devotional way, which is very different from sexual. And I think I would associate eroticism with sexuality, and I don't see that in this. They're coming together as one, as more sort of in a sense of community, in a sense of grace, rather than in a sort of a sexual way.
In the Alasya Kanyas, we see the grace of the human form and the underlying longing of all creation to be united in the Lord. This vision is what gives the special quality to the art of India, a vision which sees a unity in all its beings, human, animal, the trees and flowers, in all that there is. The desire of each man and woman for another is seen as no different from the desire of every creature to play his role in the interconnected world. The desire of each to gain the ecstasy of the knowledge of the divinity which is in each of us. Nagas and Naganis are serpent beings who continue from the earliest times in Indian art. Besides fertility, They present the protective forces of nature. The embrace of life and divinity which warmly protects us is best seen in the images of Naga couples. The jagmohan stands about 130 feet tall. The roof is made in the traditional Odisha style. It is a stepped pyramidical form known as a pidha roof. On the terraces of the different levels of the roof are made some of the finest figures at Konarak. Shiva is made in his wrathful form as Bhairava, guarding the temple from evil forces. On either side are beautiful musicians who herald the passage of the sun across the skies. Scriptures mention that Surya, or the sun, is to be praised with the accompaniment of musical instruments, the cymbal, the drum, and the flute. The musicians appear animated by their music. Their limbs are poised in rhythmic movement. The faces are finely sculpted. They are carved out of chlorite, which is both conducive to fine carving and lasts very well. The main entrance to the jagmohan is made in the style of temple doorways, which was established by the 5th century. It is made out of chlorite and is fully carved. There are 8 rows of carving, the innermost recessed most deeply. Among the motifs here are Nagas, loving couples who celebrate the harmony of existence, and the continuous vine of the pulsating life force of the world. Unfortunately, the main and tallest structure of the temple, its grand tower, has collapsed. 8 Dikpalas faced and presided over the different directions. Of these, 3 are in the nearby Archaeological Museum and 1 is in the National Museum in New Delhi. Around the tower of the temple are made the Parsava Devtas, images most closely related to the main deity in the shrine. On the south, a larger-than-life-sized Surya stands majestically on his chariot. His charioteer is Aruna, the dawn. Surya is the only Indian deity to be depicted with boots, which are not an indigenous tradition. This would reflect the constant interaction with the lands on the northwest of the subcontinent. The king and his family priest are seen kneeling below the deity. This and other images of Surya are made with a certain formality and dignity. They are among the finest iconographic art of Odisha. In ancient times, the art of stupas and cave temples was sponsored by the people. It was farmers, fishermen, traders, housewives, monks and nuns who paid for the making of the sculptures and gateways. The purpose of art was to take us to eternal themes, away from the noise and clamour of the material world around us. The aim was to lose the ego and the concern for the self. Therefore, ephemeral personalities, including of kings, were not depicted. From the 8th century onwards, we have seen a shift. There is now an emphasis on grandeur and the depiction of regal power and splendor through the making of great temples. We have also seen the emergence of images of the king in sculpture and in painting. The Sun Temple at Konarak represents the high point of monumentality and splendor in the tradition of temple building. It also celebrates the activities and life of the king as never before in temples. The niches of the sanctum and of the jagmohan were originally filled with many images of the king. He is seen practicing archery with admirers looking on. He is seen at a festival or in a leisurely moment sitting on a swing. The temple celebrates all of life around, with the divinity at the center of it all. It also places the king very close to the focus at the center and celebrates his life and greatness. The guru or teacher of the king is made much larger than the king himself. The importance given to the teacher is in keeping with continuing traditions. The King Narasimha Mahadeva I is seen worshipping the Shivalinga, Vishnu and Mahishasuramarddini. Colossal pairs of animals originally guarded the stairways on all sides of the jagmohan. The ones on the east are now placed before the entrance to the Bhoga Mandapa. The ferocious lions rear majestically above the elephants crushed below them. They awaken within us the attitude of fearlessness with which we are to face the demons of ignorance who block our path towards knowledge. Inspired by these fearless creatures who represent the potential within us, we proceed into the temple. Giant elephants and war stallions met the devotee at the other entrances to the jagmohan. Today they stand on reconstructed platforms at a little distance from where they were originally placed. They are made with lifelike realism. The Bhoga Mandapa is at the entrance to the temple complex. The temple represents the entire cosmos. Here, where we have just come into the sacred grounds, we are surrounded by a world of effusive forms. They represent the joy of life. In Indic belief, the path to realization is one which leads to bliss. Musicians and dancers greet us here in the Bhoga Mandapa. In modern times, the lost form of the classical dance of Odisha was revived largely through the study of the dance movements portrayed here. The temple of Konarak celebrates life and the energy of the sun which pervades it all. There are elephants which are made in the ancient tradition, bearing the entire structure upon their backs. Men and women are seen in daily activities. We see soldiers, hunters, village folk, and noblemen. As divinity is seen in all of creation, all aspects of life receive the attention of the artist. The vital life of nature is seen in young maidens. The interconnectedness of all beings is expressed in combined creatures. Nagas represent the benign protection of nature. In the center of all the movement and numberless forms of the world is the divinity which pervades it all.
Thank you very much for the excellent screening, Sunil. Godan Namboodiripad, thank you so much for the comment that you sometimes look at my book on Ajanta before you go to sleep, as it helps to put you in a peaceful frame of mind. Indeed, that is so much the reason for the art. That is the essence of the art of India. And such a clear message to those who sometimes misunderstand this art and speak about the erotic in it. The beauty in this art is not erotic at all. It is in fact a recognition of the grace which underlies all that there is. So it is in fact meant to lead to peace and grace and quiet and the qualities which should create a stillness of the mind and help us in our path towards knowledge. Thank you so much. I would be very happy to answer any questions which you may have, and I will request Sujata to read them out from the chat box.
Yes. And before that, I'd like to announce our next screening for all of you to mark in your calendars, please. The next one would be on Saturday, 23rd November, and it's called Art of the Verdant Himalayas. The film is about the rich treasure of the Buddhist and Hindu heritage of the Kashmir Valley. We'd love to have all of you with us again, so kindly mark it in your calendars. And I'll get back to reading the chats now. Krishna Burli is saying, beautiful.
Thank you so much, Krishna. It's always a pleasure to share these thoughts with yourself, with your depth of knowledge and your deep response to all this. Thank you.
Pritha Dutt, thank you. That was very nice, Dr. Behl. Is the style similar at Modhera or Kashmir? What is the difference?
Yes, thank you, Pritham. Now, Kashmir is a very particular style, and that takes us back to the 8th century. There is always an evolution through the centuries in Indian art, and we have, I believe, shown a film. We are, in fact, going to show a film next month on the heritage of Kashmir. So you must see that. And subsequently, there is the art at Modhera, which is of the 11th century. So there is evolution. And by the time we reach the 13th century and this grand climax of art at Konark, it becomes a vision of grandeur. It is a spectacular presentation. It is a panoramic presentation. The themes are the same. The themes of Indian art are always the same. The world around us, the Maya or Mithya of the material world, its attractions, how we are drawn to them, and eventually we must leave it behind and see the essence which underlies all of it. So leave all this behind and proceed towards stillness and quietude. So the themes are the same, but here at Konark, it is the grandest presentation of all. Thank you.
Ashok Kapoor saying very informative and beautifully done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashok. It was a pleasure to have you in the course which I gave a few months ago at the India Habitat Center.
Vidhu Verma, thanks so much for sharing.
Pleasure, Vidhu. Thank you.
Tara, beautiful, blissful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. It's always such a joy to have you with us for sharing this spiritual art. Thank you.
Richard R. Palmer, many thanks.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed it, Richard. Thank you.
Devabrata Ghosh, tranquility inherently present in your presentation is overwhelming. Thank you.
That is very kind of you to say that. This whole tradition of art has only the purpose bringing about the tranquil, to leave the noise, the confusion, the hectic activity, the paced up activity of our minds and hearts, and to take us to a silence. And if the presentation is at all in that direction, that is very kind of you to recognize and say that. And I'm grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Kat Muir, I hope I pronounced that right. If I haven't, apologies. Thank you very much. The temple in Konarak is magnificent.
Yes, Kat, very glad to have you with us to see this magnificent monument. Thank you.
Dr. D.K. Majumdar, it's a tragedy we cannot go into the deul today. Can you please enlighten us as to what is there inside?
Unfortunately, there has been a complete devastation of that deul or tower. So there is not much to be found inside. There are, of course, legends and stories about what there was inside. There is a belief that very large magnets were used inside the temple, which in fact held the deity in suspension in the air. And later, perhaps other soldiers attacked the temple and these were removed. But we have only these stories and the magnificence of that which remains, which does indicate the grandeur of what there once was. Thank you.
Pritha Dutt, many, many thanks. Dr. Behl,
My pleasure. Thank you, Brita.
Alkesh Zaveri joined late but must be informative.
Alkesh, perhaps in about a week from now, you could go to our YouTube channel after my own name, Benoy K Behl. And there, by then, we should have put up the recording. You may enjoy that.
Ruchi Saini, always love your documentaries, Benoyji. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruchi. You as a dancer would surely appreciate the glories of the Konark Temple.
Pia, thank you for the lovely film. I have not been there for many years. It inspires me as an Odissi dancer.
I'm so glad that you respond so well to that. And yes, for an Odissi dancer and for a scholar of Indian art history, what a magnificent place it is. Thank you, Pia.
And sorry, the 12 wheels represent the months of the year. Do we know what the 7 horses symbolize?
The 7 horses could symbolize the 7 days of the week or the 7 colors of the spectrum. Thank you.
I think that's about it. There don't seem to be any more questions.
Such a pleasure to be with all of you, and my many thanks once again to India Habitat Center for these lovely opportunities to share the art of India with you. Thank you very much.